Hello, hello, welcome, welcome. I'm so happy, so proud, so excited that we have this opportunity to visit for a few minutes and I can show you a few things that are really exciting. But in order to prime this conversation, I want to ask you a question and I wanted to leave this question in the back of your mind as you listen to the rest of this conversation. And the question is this, and take this question seriously because it's extremely powerful. Pretend the question is a little seed you planted into the earth, into the ground, and if you water it, and it's going to sprout up and generate a huge tree that produces fruits and seeds and all kinds of things for you, right? The question is really powerful, and the question is this: what life would you love to live? And I'll tell you, most of us live our lives by default. I live here because I was born here. I go there because I went there. I did this because they did that. In other words, we live a life by default. We don't really engineer our lives. We don't really think through what we actually want. I have a ton of videos on the internet, on YouTube, and I talk about in one video how we have been conditioned not to choose. And that conditioning not to choose extends to our lives at large. We do live a life by default, by what we have been influenced to do, and we, in essence, imitate others. Now, there's no offense in this. I'm the same way. I'm just telling you that at some point we can snap out of all of that and live in and become what Abraham Maslow used to call self-actualization, where we come into our own and we design a life that we really want to live, and we begin to make some changes and we adjust things in a very intentional and fundamental way so everything changes for you. But the question then becomes, if you are willing to consider this question seriously, what life would I love to live? How would I love my life to be? Most people, when they come for workshops or group coaching or private sessions, and we discuss that question in depth, at length, they would rather be very different from the way they are. They would like their bodies to be lean, trim, fit. I never heard of a person who actually, upon deep consideration of the matter, really wanted to be fat. I never seen that happen. People want to be fit and trim and healthy. They want to be strong. They want to be able to carry children. They want to be able to do things and run around, and they don't want to be in a hospital bed. I never heard of that. Sometimes our bodies are not the way we want it to be. And it's very easy to say, I'm too busy, my genetics are no good. It's really easy. Those are easy things to say. But the one thing that we have seen is how people have been able to transform their bodies regardless of their condition. I'm reminded, for instance, of a woman who came to see me, and she was about she was 67 pounds overweight or thereabouts, and she actually wanted to gain weight because she wanted to have bariatric surgery in her stomach and to lose weight. And the doctor told her that she didn't quite weigh enough to have the surgery because you got to qualify for the surgery. And she tried to gain weight. Notice, she tried to gain weight to qualify for the surgery but couldn't. So she calls me up and says, can you fatten me up? Can you make me gain weight with hypnosis so that I can qualify for the surgery? And I told her, look, whatever it is that we need to do for you to gain weight is the same thing we would be doing for you to lose weight. Do you want to give that a try instead? And she agreed. And we discussed, where the weight was coming from. And to make a long story short, all she had to do was to get started on this process of saying no to afternoon snacks at her office. What happened was, in her office, they had this tradition of having all these sweet pastries for mid-afternoon snacks. And then by the time she got off work at about 5, she would be starving because her blood sugar would tank after eating sugary pastries for 20, 30 minutes. Then by 5 o'clock, she was really crashing. She would get home, try to prepare dinner for her and for her son, but as she was preparing, she was snacking nonstop because she was ravenous. She was hungry. She was starving. By the time dinner was ready, she didn't really have an appetite anymore, but then she would eat all over again with her son. And of course, because, so then by midnight, she was starving again. So then she would wake up for an afternoon, for a midnight snack. And that usually meant all of the leftovers, but then she wasn't so hungry for breakfast. So she would grab a couple muffins on the way to work. Anyway, the whole thing was disorganized, and it accounted for over 60 pounds weight gain over a period of something like 10 or 15 years. So all she had to do is break the vicious cycle by saying thanks but no thanks to the afternoon snack. And in a few months, that resulted, it's a snowball effect. Eventually she went to a gym, it's a snowball effect, but eventually she lost something like 67 pounds. What about you? Is there a vicious cycle in your feeding cycle? Where would learning to say no help you? We can do that. We can install that fortitude in your subconscious mind so that you also have the ability to say thanks but no thanks to whatever it is in your case. So a man comes to see me to give you an example of the power of a resolution when it comes from the subconscious portion of the mind, because they went to the right hypnotherapist and we got the right job done the right way the first time. This man comes to see me for a marital problem. The couple comes in. If he comes in first, then the wife comes in for several sessions. And it turns out that part of her discontentment in the marriage had to do with the fact that he was gone all the time, presumably working, but not making much money. So he was a taxi cab driver. This was back in the 90s, back when taxi cabs were much more popular. And he worked at the airport. So if you've seen the taxi cabs in the airport, they make this long line of taxis. I don't even think they have that anymore. I don't know, to be honest. But they used to have this long line of taxi cabs. And you would basically sit there sometimes for hours and inch your car forward until it was your turn to take a passenger wherever they were going, right? So this guy would sit there for 12 hours a day, but maybe have one or two rides. He wasn't making a lot of money. And the wife was discontent. He works so much, but he doesn't make much money. We worked on his idea of prosperity, money, the messages that he got about money and prosperity as a child. Make a long story short, the man comes back many months later after we were done with therapy and tells me, I'm a business owner now. I have 4 cars on the road, 4 taxi cars on the road. I have 8 drivers. Each driver drives 12 hours, each car. So I doubled my income. I doubled my income. Whatever income level you're at, if you're able to double it, it's significant in a matter of months. But you see, there was a huge mindset shift. He changed his mind about himself from a taxi driver to a business owner, completely changed his mind, completely changed his life. And his marriage and his children, everything changed because he came to the hypnotherapist and they accomplished the right mindset shift that created prosperity for him and his family. What about burnout? Burnout is such a tough one. I've been there. Burnout is a tough one, very common and very difficult to get appropriate professional help for. And I can tell you because when I was in burnout, I was willing to travel, and I did. I went to many countries looking for the best of the best therapists, and it was very difficult. Number one, it's almost impossible to find specialized help and therapeutic help, and it's just really difficult. So that's one of the things that I do with a lot of zest. I'm very happy when I work with a person because I know how difficult it is to recover from burnout, and thank God we have a really good record with that. But this man comes to see me in complete burnout mode, and he was overweight, he was in a troubled marriage, his kids were not doing well, he was sure the company wanted to fire him, he was in complete burnout, very depressed, very obese, very disillusioned with life, right? He was 52 years of age at the time he came to see me. So we do quite a bit of work, and we deepen the hypnotic state each time he comes over. And eventually we merge with something that we call the light. We have a transformative experience that must be experienced to be understood. Sometimes explaining it makes no sense to the person, but he had his transformation. It's really a spiritual level transformation, and his entire life changed. He told me that, the next morning he wanted to wake up early, make breakfast for his family. It changed his whole life around. And I have a ton of stories like that. It's just so beautiful to be a part of all that. What about couples? I work with so much love when I work with a couple, because I love seeing a couple prosper and thrive and be happy. I love seeing that. I mean, I've married a bunch of people, because when it comes to relationships, I work with the three stages of it. I work with people who are chronically single, people who tell me, I can't find a date, I cannot find a mate, I cannot find somebody to marry. That's what we call the chronically single. Of course, if you're chronically single, it has something to do with us, right? So if I am chronically single and I want a mate, then I have to change my mind about myself to find a mate. And that's one of the things, thank God, we do really well at the office. So a lot of those people started getting married, and this woman came to see me and she told me, dude, I haven't even, this became like the title of a movie, of a video in YouTube, because she told me, I haven't had coffee, not even a cup of coffee with a man in 14 years since I got divorced. Think about that. An attractive woman, well-to-do, professional. She worked in a really busy environment. People knew her, but she says, not even a cup of coffee with a man. I'm lonely. It's been 14 years that I'm alone. We helped her. One day, when she had her transformation, that very same day, she leaves the office, goes pump gas into her car. She drove one of those gasoline cars, but whatever. What can I say? But she goes pump gas into the car, and the guy pumping gas into his car on the pump next to her starts talking to her about the car. Anyway, last time I saw her, they were in a deeply committed relationship, deeply in love, and they were getting ready to make plans to be together and so forth. So what a coincidence, right? 14 years, not even a cup of coffee by her own account. Suddenly she has her transformation from within. The guy pumping gas into his car next to her at the gas station suddenly discovers that she exists and wants to talk to her. And on and on and on. So I've married a bunch of those people, because they would ask me after a while, like, man, I'm so happy. I would say the man, the woman, whatever, we're so happy. Can you marry us? So I started doing that. But anyway, I do that as a hobby. The point is, because I love it so much. But the other thing that we do quite a bit of in terms of relationships is helping people who are in turmoil. Sometimes it gets really tough. We cannot understand one another. Now, there's a whole process that we follow. I follow 5 ideas. I have several videos on the internet on this. I follow the concept of, borrowed from A Course in Miracles. I follow the idea of attachment, love language, and the concept of sexual polarity, male and female. And by using those ideas and using hypnosis to change that, we have been able, thank God, to restore countless couples to thriving, to being happy, to being excited about one another. And the families win, the children win, the lawyers, the divorce lawyers lose, but the families win. I mean, there's so much victory there. There's so much. It's such a gorgeous job. I love doing this. And then, of course, on the other end of the spectrum, we see people in it's part of the relationship thing, but they're broken. They're devastated. They broke up with their partner. They cannot recover. It's very similar to depletion or burnout, but it's a little bit different because they're heartbroken. It's a little different. So I work a little bit differently, but I've developed the skills to help people in that mode as well, and recycle ourselves and grow up and grow out of that position so that we can, if the person wants to, if they can move on to another relationship without bringing back problems from the past. Really beautiful work. So that's relationships. What about you? I wonder, I wish I could talk to each one of you individually and have a deep conversation with each one of you. What is your life like? Are you content with your level of prosperity, with your health, with your body? Are you content with your relationships, not just romantic ones, but all of your relationships? Have you burnt out? Do you feel depleted? Do you not? you know. And then, of course, this area of addictions, which are which is anything that I want to change but haven't been able to. It could be anything, nail biting. It could be, you know, when we think of an addiction, we think of drugs and alcohol. But what's a drug? A drug is anything that we that we want to stop and can't for some reason. That's a drug for some reason, right? So for some people, it's watching movies and TV. I've worked with a ton of people who play video games, excessive video game playing, that they thought they were addicted and they wanted to change that but couldn't help them do that. And of course, pornography is a big one. But those are the big ones. Sometimes a person calls me up and says, "Dude, I don't know. I'm addicted to being me, to being upset. I want to grow up." So people define it differently. What is your experience like? Because if there's something that you want to change and you have tried to change but you have not been able to, and if it has to do with you, you can change. So stick around, because in the next video, I'm going to show you what hypnosis feels like, and I'm going to show you how you can do something called self-hypnosis. Because the truth is, you can change on your own. Now, some people cannot go all the way with self-hypnosis only. They improve, but they cannot eliminate the problem. Not every problem is going to respond to self-hypnosis, because the mind sort of sabotages the process of change. But you can certainly get started, and you can certainly make some advances if you want to take the time to learn self-hypnosis. So in the next video, we're going to be talking about hypnosis, self-hypnosis, and how you can begin the process of change. Deal? So mega blessings to all of you. I'm so excited to have this conversation with all of you, and we'll see you in just a moment.